The Green Party of England and Wales have been ordered to pay £90,000 to cover the costs of their former deputy leader, who has won a discrimination case against them following a row over his gender-critical beliefs. And the winner of this case, Shara Ali, I'm delighted to say, is with us in the studio. Welcome to the show. Shara, some people may not have seen you on the show before, some people may not be familiar with the case. Can you go back and just explain, why did this case even come about in the first place?
A subset of people in the Green Party took exception to the fact that I was reappointed actually, as a national spokesperson for policing and domestic safety. And my role would be to cover home affairs and justice. And they took exception because I had a gender-critical belief. And I was talking about topics such as same-sex prisons for women, which is extremely important, safeguarding and safety against male rapists who might choose to identify as women. And I said, well, there's a problem with that. There's a problem with that in Green Party policy. I was also speaking quite vocally around the Gender Identity Development Service. And we've seen, since then, we've seen CAS. So everything that I'd been saying as a credible, experienced Green politician, I've been vindicated on. And the trial followed their removal of me as a spokesperson in February 2022, and I took them to court around that. I said, you're discriminating against me on the basis of my gender-critical protected belief, as it was then, following the tremendous ruling of Forster.
Yes, no, this is very interesting to me, because I would have thought that the points of view that you were expressing, the idea of protecting women's rights, women's safety, safeguarding generally, that these are in line with traditional Green Party policies. So I don't understand why you would suddenly become persona non grata.
They absolutely are in line with party policy. I was experienced spokesperson, served during the 2015 general election as a deputy leader, so I knew what I was talking about, written a couple of books in green politics for what it's worth. So I always based, and still do, and have done, in my speaking engagements, I was representing the party. And I could have said, although I don't say this, I could have said that I was speaking contrary to actually as I believed, but I was speaking in accordance with what the Green Party should be saying at that point.
Yes.
We have policy on, for example, single-sex wards for women in hospitals. You wouldn't hear about this because the fanatics in the party don't want to admit that we do have gender-critical policy.
So it's in there, in black and white?
Absolutely.
Oh, well, that's
even before the Conservatives floated it.
But even if it weren't the case, I mean, as you say, since the Maya Forstater case, since it is now being established unequivocally in law that gender-critical views are protected legally, then surely the Green Party should be up for discussion within its ranks. What's wrong with people having the debates?
Absolutely. We have always been, since I joined the party over 20 years ago, for the majority of that time, up until about 2018, we were open to have discussion and debate, and politics has to have open discussion and robust debate, because if you can't justify your decision-making, you're going to be making extremely bad policy. We saw that with the Scottish Greens in Parliament. The reason they're out of government now is because they tried to put through a harebrained, completely bankrupt policy of self-ID, which was found to be contrary to our own equality legislation.
And there's a number of parties that this has affected. Obviously, the SNP are another example. A number of the major parties in Ireland are another example. There's all sorts of parties. This seems to just infect the party so that discussion is no longer possible. Why do you think this particular ideology has this power?
Well, the Green Party is often proud of saying that we do politics differently. Unfortunately, we don't. We are the opposite of that. We're actually worse than the worst hypocrites of political corruption. So you could say it's to do with common or garden careerism in the party.
Yes.
We have a subset of people who are driving out people who have rational environmental convictions like myself in order to push themselves forward. Sian Berry is probably one of the key proponents, as was found in the court documentation, which is voluminous, around 4,000 pages of which. We have a number of individuals, Sian Berry at the helm and others, Matt Brown, who is pretty much AWOL at the moment, who need to be held accountable. They need to be held accountable for the fact that I was driven. I'm not the perpetrator here. I am the victim. The costs of this case, 90,000, as you say, court costs, and also £9,000 damage, £99,000, just thought of just short of £100,000, those who were responsible for making those decisions which have been found to be unlawful discrimination, they should, even today, be held accountable for their actions.
But am I right in thinking that they had expected or hoped that you would pay your own costs, or pay their costs, indeed?
Well, it's extraordinary. So the judgment came out, the ruling came out in February this year, and then we went into denial mode within the Green Party of England and Wales. In fact, there was a lot of briefing against, oh, look, he's lost on the majority of his claims, and so on and so forth. And they completely misunderstood the judgment, which I can just say very briefly, because it's very important. Maya Forster has showed that gender-critical belief, sex is immutable, is worthy of respect in a democratic society. I wanted to show that it was also worthy of respect in a political party. The consequences of not being able to engage openly in a political party have extreme consequences for democratic politics itself. Moreover, you might suppose that within political parties, the threshold for free speech is higher. It should be possible, and I readily consent, as the judgment does itself, that politicians are putting themselves in the firing line. They may have to operate on a higher threshold of abuse even. I wouldn't go so far as harassment. But what the judgment said very clearly, under the the human rights legislation in this country and European Convention of Human Rights Articles 9, 10 and 11 to do with freedom of conscience, freedom of expression and freedom of association respectively, he said that they are fundamental. You could call them fundamental human rights. So on the one hand, you could say, well, that protects to some extent the abuser from being, from going too far.
Yes.
But on the other hand, it protects. The Green Party completely misunderstood that part of the judgment.
Right.
It actually protects us, the gender-critical folk, from being able to carry on saying what it is we need to say robustly and rationally without being subjected to transphobia smear campaigns.
Yes. So finally, Shara, all of that you've explained extremely well, but on the other hand, the party has still suspended you.
In fact, this is extraordinarily reckless. There are a number of Greens, deep Greens, you might call them, Greens in exile, who have been suspended even since the court judgment in February. What you can't shy away from, and what was great about the cost win, is that it's very hard, the way people are orientated towards money, to deny that you have lost, and you have lost fulsomely. The fact that they suspended me just a few weeks ahead of that final hearing shows how reckless and incompetent they are. And I'm afraid to say, and I'm happy to make the informal call to the 60,000 members of the party, not just to take back control of your party, but if the party does not revoke those no-fault suspensions, which have arisen due to a weaponised, politicised disciplinary process, then they will be facing another court judgment from my end, because I will be putting in another case against them for discrimination and victimisation this time, and they will lose that.
Well, strong words, but justifiable. Shara Ali, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.